Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Legends of Runeterra finals. My name is Zeddy. I'm going to be hosting tonight alongside my good friend, The Saved One, who will be casting with me tonight. We've got a number of really great games going on. Saved One, how are you feeling about tonight's matches?
You know what? I haven't casted for about a month, and it was in the FPS category. I've always wanted to cast Runeterra. It's always been a secret game I've always loved, at least for as long as it's been out. And I've always wanted to cast it. And now I finally get to do it with you in this tournament, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really great. Obviously, we've seen how well our four finalists played during the qualifiers Saturday night, and we've got some really awesome matches lined up for tonight. We're going to actually take a quick look at our players, just for those of you that may be tuning in for to the tournament for the first time, and kind of get to know our players. First off, we have Spencer Giov representing Bradley University. Spencer. Real TF list, some really exciting decks. Sabrin, what do you feel about the deck list that Spencer's rocking tonight?
So already you're saying that that the scouts came out the other night, and that's super standard. That's super standard because even Swim has it at the top of his list in terms of how OP that deck is right now. And it's just because of how aggressive it is, right? It's super easy to level up Misfortune and Quinn if given the turns. And knowing how this meta is right now, being super drawn out, easily you can level those up. TF as well has also been experimented in a couple of these decks, and you can see as well that he's running the TF Swain as one of his options here tonight. But you were talking about the Ezreal TF in particular, and it's kind of a weird one. It's definitely a weird one. It's an aggro type of deck with Bilgewater, but then it has some Piltover type of things in there. It's got Static Shock, it has Mystic Shot as well, and then uh Thermo Beam. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about it too much. I'm gonna have to see how it actually plays out. I feel like he's kind of combining two different decks together, but you know what? Maybe sometimes it can work.
It's got a lot of really great removal options, and we've seen that deck
Yep.
really perform in the previous rounds of the tournament. Let's move on ahead to contestant
Yeah.
number three, our third place finalist from Saturday's qualifiers, David DTU, representing UC Santa Barbara. David had
Mhm.
a really impressive showing, going 3-1. David had some really interesting decks that were a lot of fun to watch. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see him on stream. So this is going to be our first time seeing David on stream for the
Mhm.
Runeterra tournament.
Yeah, and it's really cool that he's going to be facing someone like Spencer. Spencer right now has to come into this tournament and almost kind of prove himself, right? He ended up going 2-2. David, you were talking him up earlier. Um, he ended up going 3-1. He lost his first game actually versus Spencer, even at that. So we're gonna have to see how these two guys, I guess, carry themselves out through this tournament as well. David playing some pretty good decks at that too, even tonight.
Absolutely. Moving on to our second place uh, from the qualifiers, Dango coming in with a 3-1 streak as well, representing Arizona State.
Mhm.
Dango had some really impressive aggro lists. We were talking at the end of the qualifiers about how Dango chooses in his misfortune list to actually run Lucian and taking the Kith 3 of
Mhm.
the Bold, two kind of off meta picks that you don't often see with that list, and how they absolutely dominated in the qualifiers. That Kith 3 of the Bold really representing a massive threat on that turn 6 drop. I'm really excited to see what Dango has to show for us moving into the second match of tonight.
It honestly looks like he's running a lot of meta decks coming into the night, right? You were talking about the Lucian MF, and I have seen that actually very early on within this patch. A lot of players were actually substituting the Quinn for the Lucian just because of how strong Lucian and Senna can actually be as well. Demasian's early game is almost unmatched, so it's kind of crazy like that. And then something that I personally haven't seen too much of in solo queue, which is just the Lulu Shen. It's been at the top of a lot of people's picks, and the amount of supporting that it can do and how fast you can level up Lulu in the early games is absolutely insane.
We
So,
saw those Flower Childs grow to massive
yeah,
strength.
yeah.
That one game, top decking 3 Flower Childs right into his starting mulligan, and just how it absolutely snowballed the board with that Shen, with that Lulu support. So hopefully we'll get to see some more crazy good gameplay from Dango. But last but not least, Zingbet coming in with a 4-0 streak from the qualifiers, representing Boston University. I was really happy with the way that Zingbet played that qualifiers. Like I was saying on stream, big fan of the Nocturne Diana, and I'm really excited to see how he performs with that list tonight in the finals, really fighting for that #1 spot again.
I love the decks that are making the return, right? From the Bilgewater patch era, right? You have the deep deck that he's going to be running as well tonight. He's also running the Ezreal TF, and like you said, he's running the Nightfall deck. I like this deck as well. It's got the Solari Soldier, which is so strong as a 1 mana. Because you play it first, and if you're attacking, it's an automatic 3 damage if the opponent doesn't have anything. It reminds me of Noxus Burn just a little bit, and I'm kind of sad that no one's running the Noxus Burn, the evolution of that. People have been expanding on that style of a deck, and sadly, no one's running it here in this tournament. But maybe next week we'll see it. However, there's a lot of really nice meta decks coming into tonight.
Absolutely, really crazy fun decks. And a wide variety too, especially what we saw in the qualifiers, a wide variety of champion picks and region picks. We're going to get started with our first game here in just a second. But first, we want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors, EGD Collective and All Mid, for sponsoring tonight's event. EGD Collective providing RP card rewards for our top 3 players, $50 for first place, $20 for second, and $10 for third. Really awesome rewards for our players. You know they're going to be fighting hard for those prizes. And then obviously, of course, All Mid coming in with the Cougar Bunker. It's a vacuum mouse bungee. I've never seen a product like this before in my life. Super exciting stuff. It lets you keep your cord out of your way as you're playing your games, holding it up high so your mouse cord doesn't get tangled with the rest of your stuff as you're playing. Really awesome prizes and rewards for our top 3 finalists.
Yeah, and to even add on to your point about the mouse bungee, my buddy bought it like earlier this year, and he said it's one of the best purchases he's ever gotten. So
Absolutely.
not bad prizes, not bad prizes coming into tonight.
Not at all. And I'm really excited to see in our first match of the night how our players fight it out for that. We're going to get transitioning into Spencer versus Zingbet for game 1, match 1 in just a second here. I'm excited to see what decks these guys have queued up for their first game.
Yeah, you can see, or at least on our screen, we see a preview of what these guys are prepping. But yeah, just like you said, there's a lot of potential coming into tonight, and there's a lot of different decks that kind of clash with each other. Zingbat, he's running the Ezreal TF. Spencer also running the Ezreal TF. I want to see how Spencer ends up playing the scouts, because personally, I couldn't get it to work here in this patch because dragons are just so incredibly strong. And once it gets to 10 mana, that's when the A Soul starts to come out, and I get very sad. But
Asol wins on turn 10. Nothing beats that. Nothing beats that power. Nothing beats that aggression. But we did actually get to see the Ezreal TF mirror match last time around. It was really interesting. Spencer versus Zingbet in that last round of the qualifiers. So this is going to be kind of like just like a big, really strong rematch to start us off. I'm really excited to see if Spencer can kind of, pull up some of that resentment, I guess, from the loss on Saturday, and really kind of show us that, maybe like show us that he's the better player if he wants to come and show that aggression today.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one. Like you said, Spencer has to come up, right? And he's got to perform. And it's all about if he can outperform these decks better than his opponents. I know that's a super general statement, but I feel like Zingbat, he might have a little bit better read on the meta right now, and I think that's not a bad thing to say, right?
No, absolutely not.
When I see a Nightfall, right, and I see Ezreal TF, that's control. And then you see the deep deck, that kind of isn't like all 3 of those decks obviously don't have the same play style, but they have the same general ideas. Try and end the game by turn 10. Once you get to 10 mana, 11 mana, that's when you really start closing out these games. Spencer, he's coming into it as well with a mid-range deck with TF and Swain. He also has the early game deck with the MF Quinn if he wants to try and take an easy game to start it all off. But these guys are just waiting for the go ahead from whoever in order to start it off.
Yeah, we're just taking a couple seconds to make sure the players are set and ready to go for our first game. But yeah, as you were saying about that kind of like turn 10 finishing win condition for a lot of Zingbet's lists.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's actually going to be an advantage for Spencer. Picking up the
Maybe.
Misfortune Quinn, having that early aggression. Maybe being able to outpace some of these late game decks. Like the Nightfall aggro deck. I know it's considered an aggro deck, but Nightfall, it's one of those tricky aggro decks where it's kind of hard to pilot because you don't really want to be dropping units on turn 1, turn 2 without
Yeah.
having that spell mana to proc that Nightfall. Without
Mhm.
the ability to get those Nightfall units out and triggered, you kind of fall a little out of pace. So maybe Spencer, with kind of the heart of the cards in those early mulligans, getting those top decks that he needs, putting the pressure on early before Zingbet can kind of build up a board to respond. I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, like his most expensive card within that deck list is I can't pronounce it. Moonstalker. 6 mana, right? It's not that much, right? You have to start waiting for the earlier ones. The only thing that kind of throws me off about the Nightfall decks is that you have to play some of these cards second, right? And if you can't, right? If you're kind of backed into the corner where you have to play a Nightfall and can't actually get the Nightfall proc off, I don't know how that's going to affect this game. And that's why I personally have stayed away from Nightfall, because it kind of limits you to how you play aggressively. But definitely
They're a
some
lot of fun though. There are so
they
much.
are. You're right. You're definitely right.
I'm a huge fan, like I was saying, and I'm going to keep saying it again tonight. Every time we see Zingbet pull out that Nightfall list,
Yeah.
easily my favorite deck in this meta right now.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to seeing how he pilots that deck, how that plays. Again, but obviously the Ezreal TF really providing kind of like a unique contrast on that list. It seems similar because it's low cost champions and high aggression, but the Ezreal TF really wants to wait for that late game stage for that Ezreal to level up, so you can spam those low cost spells and slam that Nexus with Mystic shots.
Mhm.
It's not as early game as it appears. So a very different play style, and Zingbet really showing his range kind of with the decks that he's bringing into these tournaments.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it's super interesting. It's definitely an interesting play style, for sure. The Ezreal TF. The only thing that's kind of thrown me off about TF in particular is that he's got like such low HP, and that's kind of scary to think about. But the deck itself is really really well planned out. Ezreal and TF both have low health. However, their trade off, if you can actually get them leveled up, is super super scary. The one thing about the Ezreal TF deck that kind of sticks out for me is the Riptide Rex. Right, that's kind of the biggest one,
Yeah.
that you obviously want to get onto the board. Um, Once you have actually hit the enemy nexus, and that's kind of the main goal of this deck in particular. And we'll see if Spencer and Zingbet actually get to that point, or if they even need to pull out this deck, because it is a best of 3. All you got to do is win twice, and right now on paper Zingbet should tear up his opponent, but Spencer, who has any idea what he's got planned?
Well, we've actually got our bans coming through. So Zingbet, we know will be running both the Nightfall aggro and the Ezreal TF into Spencer's Ezreal TF and the scouting deck. We actually have seen both the Twisted Fate Swain being banned away and the Nautilus deck banned away as well. So two kind of aggressive decks here being picked up in this first match.
Mm-hmm. And even just to kind of go off topic just a little bit, because of course we've analyzed the heck out of Spencer and Zingbet. I'm really excited to see. I think this is a Braum. Yeah, Braum Nautilus from David. Braum has been such a weird one recently, and I feel like he's so incredibly good because of Starlit Seer. Um, I really want to see this deck in play. I hope we get to see David later on this night, tonight, and actually end up seeing this deck because it's super interesting. And I feel like he kind of crafted it himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, David and Dango will be facing off in our
Yeah.
second match tonight. David actually brought 3 Nautilus lists with him, just switching up the champions and the follower package along with each. Obviously, a very big fan of the Nautilus. I have to say that with the Bilgewater package, Nautilus was easily my favorite champion as well. That Nautilus
Mhm.
Maokai list
Yep.
absolutely dominating the ladder the first couple weeks of that expansion.
Yep.
And even still today, A tier deck on Mobalytics, a lot of players seem to
Yeah.
really enjoy this list even to this day. And David running some really interesting choices, especially with this Braum. I like the pickup of the Starlit Seer and the way it
Mhm.
combos with the Zap Strafin and the Coral Creatures, kind of like running that attune package. Obviously, putting a lot of value and respect into the spells that he techs in with this list. Even running a Winter's Breath, which is a
Yeah.
very odd tech. with this list, but obviously did him very well to perform the way he did in the qualifiers. So yeah, really exciting to see how he pulls up with that list for sure.
Yeah, he's got 3 deep decks that he's put onto the board here tonight, and we'll definitely end up seeing him just like you said. Over onto Dango though. Wow, he's got 3 interesting decks, and we were talking about the aggro deck in particular, which was the Lucian MF. As for the Swain TF, that's one that we've seen this whole entire tournament. The Lulu Shen was the one that really interested me. Simply, I don't have the essence in order to get Lulu right now. but other than that, Demacia plus what's his region? Ionia can be really good. Fiora Shen decks were really popular when this game first came out, but then the control decks kind of ate it up.
Yeah, I mean, Fiora has made a comeback in other places. We haven't seen a whole lot of Fiora lists. Actually, I don't think a single player brought a Fiora list. I might be wrong about that. I hope that fact is a fact for sure. But we really haven't seen a whole lot of Fiora in this tournament. But she has been kind of increased in popularity, running Demacia Freljord, Fiora with something like just like Freljord health buffs to kind of keep her alive here. But it looks like we are actually about to enter game number 1, match number 1, with the Scout list versus the Ezreal TF. Spencer taking the Misfortune Quinn into the Ezreal, into the Twisted Fate. Let's see how this game unfolds.
You have to get a really great first draw. In particular, and it's got to be some Demacian cards that come out. You already see Cythria, War Chefs coming out. You have Brightsteel Protector. That is an amazing first hand coming through. Zingbet, though, he's kind of biting the bullet. He had 2 Rexes. Oh, he got all 4s, all 4 manas. That's kind of unfortunate. He did get the 2 mana, though, the black market, but that's not the best turn 1 that I would like.
No, absolutely not. But we definitely see, like we were saying earlier, Spencer really needs to be able to play on curve here, and having really that flawless start. Kithria Cloudfield into the War Chefs as like a beautiful kind of 1-2 pop going into turn 2 here.
There you go. Yeah, and this is also not a bad draw coming in from Zingbet as well, as he does get to take out the War Chefs. However, he does take 3 just to your face, going down to 17, passes his turn, and passes it on over. It's not horrible, but turn 3, Zingbet has nothing.
Zingbet, interestingly, choosing to hold the mana for the
Yeah,
black market merchants, obviously valuing that nab ability. Might decide to commit one of them here just for the body, the defensive body. But that nab really coming in clutch with the Twisted Fate, being able to kind of advance that level up condition, drawing cards off the top of the enemy deck.
yeah, he was forced. He was forced to put it down. It wouldn't have been too great to at least have some of the feathers on the field, but one of them has challenger, one of them doesn't. He might just sacrifice the one, and that's gonna be it. He does have Cythria for his next turn, as well as a challenger. But that's 4 damage straight to the face if he wants to just put them both on the field. But no, Grizzled Ranger. That could be a really nice turn as well.
I think Spencer really knows that his win condition here is getting as much damage down on face as possible. Knowing
Yeah.
that Zingbet's list is more spell focused and not unit focused, he can afford to kind of take these early turns to drop some more units and really pressure this board. You see here attacking with 4 units to one defender that's actually going to get killed off here by the barriered Fleet Feather Tracker. Spencer really playing this early game perfectly, doing as much damage as he can to this Nexus before
Wow.
Zingbet can really get a chance to set up his board.
That's disgusting. Did about 6 damage right to the face of his opponent. Zingbet, he's got a great late game board, or at least in his hand, but he can't exactly get any of them out just yet. I wonder if he wants to use the TF to red card any of these, um, just to kind of remove at least a little bit. But yeah, it's exactly what he's gonna do.
The problem here with the Twisted Fate is that even though it has the ability to threaten all of Spencer's board currently attacking, the main issue here with the Twisted Fate is that it gets killed off very easily
Yep.
by something like a Fleet Feather Tracker. It's a super vulnerable card. As you were saying, that 2 HP champion,
Yeah.
forced to commit it early, it's super vulnerable to removal. And playing it this early without having the draw power in hand means that Twisted Fate could just become food, really, for Spencer's board.
And that's exactly what he's trying to do here. He's trying to just force lethal on him and force the TF at least out onto the board. Um, the great thing for Zingbet is that he does have the thermo beam, but don't know if he exactly wants to use it just yet. But Yeah, this is this is it's a very very scary board, and TF does unfortunately fall, at least for Zingbet. He does got a lot of cards in his hand that he can play, but honestly, it was just like the initial turn, the initial round one
And this is
draw.
exactly what we were talking about before the match even began. This high
Yeah,
speed aggression from Spencer.
yeah,
Zingbet not really being able to find kind of the time to set up his own defense. He's on 1 health now, moving into turn 7, 1 HP on Nexus. Thankfully for him, Spencer's not running any Nexus strike damage directly. All of his damage is unit based, but unless he can get himself a board that's strong enough to kind of survive Spencer's bleed here, he's going to fall quick. So we
yeah.
have to see really like this is kind of Zingbet's like last turn really to cement himself in this game, or it's going to be all over before it even began.
And he's got the tough, so I don't think War Chef's die just yet, which is a really great thing, at least for Spencer. He's got an answer to whatever Zingbet has in store for him, and
Yeah, I mean, the amount of removal that Zingbet's packing it's not enough to kind of deal with the defensive pressure that Spencer's running in his list. These Demacia decks being very popular for running things like the Ranger's Resolve,
yeah.
like the Unyielding Spirit, these kind of really strong defensive spells and tools to keep your board alive. Here comes the Genevieve, even on the defensive turn for that +1/1, keeping his units alive. Spencer, all he has to do really at this point is just have one more unit. And that's exactly what he's done here. He's going into this turn with 6 units to 4. This is
Mhm.
very scary situation for Zingbet.
Definitely, we have to watch to see what ends up being traded here, at least here on this turn. We do know that he still has a 4/4 with barrier, so you can very easily at least grab a little bit of denial. It's exactly what he's gonna do.
Yeah, using that
Genevieve card.
scout through the best
Yeah.
of its ability to clear out some of these units.
Mhm.
But if I were Spencer here, I would just take this 4 damage to the face.
Me too.
There's nothing really worth protecting that. Keep your board advantage, keep your board pressure, and
Yep.
just swing back right away at the beginning of next turn.
Yep. You've got two Grizzled Rangers that he could easily place here on this turn. Two scouts that you could do. Also MF. So it's not a bad draw from Zingbet, but he just wants to do the immediate damage with Ranger.
And as you're saying, with the misfortune in hand, he could have forced the lethal, and I think he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to trade out the scout first, kind of force that defense. But
There he
unfortunately,
is.
actually giving Zingbet the time to drop down the warning shot into the Riptide Rex. We'll have to see how these pings unfold, but Spencer's board is definitely going to take a beating here.
Yeah, he does have the MF though, so as long as he can get MF on the board to attack, that's all he's got to do, and then he ends up winning this match.
And it looks like he managed to pull it off with the misfortune dropping down immediately after the Grizzled Ranger here. That 1 damage ping to Nexus is going to be enough
There it
to clinch
is.
the win. And Spencer is going to take our first game of the series, our first game of the finals. Well played to Spencer, of course, with this misfortune list.
That was almost very close as well. Even though his opponent was on 1 HP, there
Sure,
was
for
the possibility. There was the not very big possibility, but there was a possibility that Zingbek could have come back.
if
Uh,
any champion in this game can swing an almost unwinnable game in like less than a turn, it's definitely that leveled up Ezreal. Those
whew,
1 points, 2 point spells, even those 0 point spells with the warning shots. We saw it last on Saturday. 2 warning shots with a leveled up Ezreal is 6 damage directly to
yeah.
Nexus. That's a lot of damage when you're on the back foot. That kind of damage is enough to swing a game, even if you're on 1 HP.
Yeah. And already they're ready for game number 2 as well. They're already jumping into this one. And it's going to be the Diana, the Nightfall, versus the Azrael TF as well. Spencer pulling that one out for himself. He was on the Scouts, and now he wants the complete opposite board.
So interesting choice. Obviously, since this is a conquest format, Spencer has to win his last game with this last deck with this
Hmm.
Twisted Fate Ezreal. But Zingbet still had the choice between his Nightfall list and the Mirror, and Zingbet obviously feels more comfortable going in with this aggro list. And I actually agree with that call. I think taking the aggro list into something late game like the Twisted Fate Ezreal is exactly what he needs to
Mm-hmm.
do to put this pressure on. Get these early game units out. Going actually for the Dusk pedal there as opposed to the Solari Soldier, really valuing these Nightfall procs into later turns.
Yeah. Could have maybe put out his I was just gonna say the Solari Soldier. He could have done it turn number 1, but this is where it comes into his own benefit, where he denies his opponent from attacking here in round number 2, and maybe could even stack them. Right? He just drew another one, but you might want to trade it or take out. Yeah, just take out the barrel. I didn't see that for a second.
Interesting choice from Zingbet. Honestly, knowing that his deck, his win con here is really outpacing this list, choosing to go for the Dusk Pedal as opposed to the Solari Soldier turn 1 really kind of cements himself as playing more reactively here in this first match. I'm not sure if that's the choice that he needs to be making, but we will see the second Solari Soldier come down, filling up his board, protecting against these low health units that Spencer is starting to flood with.
Mm-hmm. And he was forced to use it as well, right? He couldn't exactly use the daybreak effect, but wow, Spencer immediately placing down Ezreal, no fear whatsoever, and he just kind of understands what his opponent's deck is capable of, which isn't, taking out opponents. But
I
just as I
completely
say
agree
that,
with that. Well, yeah, the vulnerability comes out from the Nocturne, but even just
yeah,
like you were saying, like knowing the other person's deck list, and that's kind of the disadvantage, I guess, or the rather the trick here with these open deck list tournaments is that you know
yeah,
exactly what your opponent's running in their list. And
yeah,
Zingbet very clearly is not running any heavy removal. The only removal options he have in this deck are this Unspeakable Horror and
yeah.
of course Nocturne vulnerability. So Spencer really making the read there, dropping the Ezreal, forcing out the Nocturne earlier than perhaps Zingbet would have liked. Really nice play here from Spencer.
Yep. Just wanting to take out the Ezreal immediately is a really, really big one. He's going to be able to do that as well, even though he could have very easily done 5 damage to the face. We both know what Ezreal can do, and you were even saying it in the last one, what Ezreal is actually capable to do. So take it out, and it'll serve you really well later on.
Yeah, you often don't find on the ladder the opportunity to kind of play that Ezreal early, like Spencer just did here, to get those Nexus strike procs. More often than not, you level them up before you play them. But Spencer taking a more aggressive approach, and I love to see that from players. I love to see hard reads like that from player. Knowing that when you can play a champion. Unfortunately for him, the Nocturne came out almost immediately. But I still think that it really messed up Zingbet's sequencing. I don't think
Yeah.
he would have wanted to play the Nocturne there. Ideally, I think he would have liked to play it on his attack turn to get that -1 proc down. So I still think it was a really strong play, and those are the kind of plays that we're going to be seeing here. Hopefully, we'll get to see a bunch more of them tonight during tonight's finals.
Yep. One quick invoke and then passes on his turn. Has a 10 mana burst spell in his hand. I'm not too sure what exactly it does, but we do see the TF coming out as well, just to do 1 damage to the whole entire board, as well as the enemy Nexus taking out 2 opponents and leaving Nocturne just at 1 HP. So he's not able to defend really anything. But we could see the can't remember what this card's called, Doom Beast, just to drain some HP from the enemy Nexus.
The Doom Beast, probably one of the strongest followers from the new expansion. The
Yeah.
ability to basically play for 7 damage in a sense, coming out for 3, draining 2, which is a heal for 2. It's a really strong 3-point Nightfall unit that, of course, obviously helps level up both your Diana and your Nocturne when
Yep.
played on the offensive. Zingbet choosing to take the 4 damage from the Stygian Outlooker to the face, just getting ready for his attack turn, moving into turn 7.
Yeah, just kind of it gains +2 if it's nightfall, then has fearsome. So not too much that you can exactly do from that. Plus, it's also 1 mana. So nightfall, ladies and gentlemen. But
That's a scary one drop, coming out, especially when you're pushing for lethal. One drop
oh
that
yeah,
plays for 4 damage with Fearsome, like,
yep,
seems kind of overtuned, honestly. But we
just a
actually
little.
see Spencer here, or Zingbet here, rather, choosing not to value the Nightfall on the Stygian Outlooker, rather using it to set up his own Nightfalls with something like the Cygnus, with something like the Lunari Dustbringer, really kind of knowing that he needs this ephemeral strike. Maybe even
Mhm.
looking to boost his Nocturne into the ephemeral range and go for that quick 11 damage push before the game kind of falls out of hand.
Yeah, and he's gonna give one of his allies elusive, so he definitely guarantees at least a little bit of damage onto the enemy Nexus. Wow,
Interesting
looking like
choice here to target the overwhelm as opposed to the 7-1 Nocturne. The overwhelm obviously being able to hit through the defenders. Maybe he kind of predicted that the Nocturne was going to die to something like a removal spell from Spencer's hand, and just choosing to value that elusive damage then on the 5-3 instead.
that's a lot of damage. That's 9 straight to the face, and that's only with just 1 turn. That's a that's a whole lot.
And here comes the Riptide Rex. Zingbet, honestly, not looking like he's in too great of a spot here. This big removal drop here, forcing out a lot of kind of defensive plays here needed from Zingbet. He doesn't have the mana for the Living Legends. He has the Living Legends in hand, but he won't have the chance to use it. And Spencer still has an attack token.
Yeah.
Um, I have no idea how he gets out of this. Maybe able to chump block the Riptide Rex. That's 4, 6, 8, 11 damage. It's still perfect lethal. I honestly don't know what opportunities Zingbet has here. I think this is game. I think this is game, set, and
Yep,
match.
that could very well be the case. That's a lot. Oh no, he sees it.
See the Oracle's eye predicting the future. Zingbet knows it's over, and a quick end to Zingbet's streak. Going from 4-0
Yeah,
in the qualifiers to 0-2
yeah.
in the finals. What an absolute upset for
He had
Spencer.
a great run. He had a very, very great run. Going into qualifiers, just like you said, going into qualifiers 4-0, you expected him. I even said before this match, on paper, it looked like very easily he should have won this match. Zingbet, I mean, but Spencer, he came out with something very, very powerful, and yeah, that was super, super fast.
Obviously, I think it just comes down to the matchups. Really, like we were saying,
Yeah,
Scout deck just so oppressive on ladder and
yeah,
apparently in tournament too.
yeah,
Usually you don't see these aggro lists making a show in tournaments. Usually you see it kind of swapped out for something like a ramp list, like a control list. Usually decks that are a little bit more mid range that have the flexibility. Something like Vi, Elise,
yeah,
Karina control. But we haven't actually seen a whole lot of that this tournament. Usually it's actually these aggro lists, and that Scout deck just absolutely dominating in game one, and then the Ezreal Twisted Fate coming out in game two with all that removal, with all that pressure on the board. Like we were saying, the slow pace of that Nightfall deck, it just couldn't keep up.
yeah. It was super unfortunate. I definitely agree with you. But it was a lot of damage coming out just right to the face, right? Like I said, I think it was like on turn 1. Spencer needed a beautiful, beautiful first hand. And he got Cythria, he got uh what do you get? He got War Chefs was in there. He had
The
a
Grizzled Ranger,
yeah, Grizzle, 2 of them, right? So, Brightsteel came out at some point there as well, and then to close out the board, he had MF. The only thing is that after his initial turn, the MF was the one that was his saving grace, right? Just top decking it. If he didn't have the MF, then he actually might have lost that game, no matter how great your early game was.
and you're totally right about that. But
Yeah,
I think even like just analyzing the matchups, just kind of taking a look. I honestly think where Spencer's biggest strength in this tournament, we've seen Zingbet. We know he's an amazing player. I think where Spencer really kind of outshowed Zingbet here was just knowing what matchups he wanted and really kind of playing the mind games in these deck selections. For the viewers out there that don't know, the bans are public. Obviously, the players know what decks have been banned before they go into their first
yeah,
game, but they don't know which of their two decks their opponent is going to be using until they get into their game. So Spencer really winning the mind games there and kind of getting the matchups he wanted both times. With that aggressive list into the Ezreal Twisted Fate round one, and then obviously
yeah.
having his own Ezreal Twisted Fate list against Zingbet's 2 lists, and just really taking advantage kind of these open deck lists.
Yeah. And I think it definitely was a great, great display coming in from both of these players for sure. Just like you said, the ban list and the deck lists themselves coming onto the board. Um, it allows these players to really think, I guess, outside the box, right? What can this player have is the main thing that you have to start thinking about when you are playing in these tournaments and when you are trying to go for certain moves. And yeah, I feel like both of these players kind of had both decks open just to see what possibilities could have been placed down on the table. But Spencer was crazy, crazy aggressive, even with the Ezreal TF deck. He put his best foot forward and had a lot of early mana cards, and the Riptide Rex just kind of was the cherry on top. So
Yeah,
that's really good.
absolutely. Really amazing performance from Spencer. We will get to see Zingbet again, of course, in the third place match. In an attempt to kind of secure his third place prizing. But Spencer, moving on to our finals, we'll get to see him again later on in the night. We'll take a quick break here before we get set up for our second match. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be back with more Runeterra in just a few minutes.
bring to fall the giants? Can we make the final call? We are the ones to ignite the darkened skies, the champions of the world that we defy. A solo ride of the few who rise up high, and we all fight at the last light.
Welcome back, everyone. We're just about getting ready to get set up for match number 2. It's going to be Dango versus David. Really excited to see this matchup. Like we said earlier, we haven't been able to see David on the live stream yet. We are actually going to get to see his triple Nautilus list here that he brought with him. He brought a Nautilus and with 3 different factions as his 3 deck submissions. Obviously, a big fan of Nautilus, as we saw in that player profile at the beginning. David, really excited to show the Nautilus' strength here in this tournament.
Yeah, he's running the at least one deep deck that has 3 Nautiluses, and that's it. And Nautilus himself is extremely, extremely strong. I've always kind of thought that the Maokai in the deck is just kind of like a why not? Let's just throw Maokai in there.
Yeah.
But Nautilus himself is absolutely, absolutely crazy. Once you get it onto the board, so say that again.
Yeah, no, I was just saying for sure. Actually,
Yeah.
we can take a look at this estuary deep deck here
Yeah.
on the screen for you. This is a really unique list. As we were saying, David brought Nautilus with 3 of his lists with really odd champion combinations. And here, choosing, as you were saying, to just
Yeah.
bring Nautilus by himself. You know, it's a Lone Ranger Nautilus with this list.
Yeah.
And packing it in package as well, taking the star shaping and the Spacey Sketcher, you know, really taking value out of these new Targon cards.
Yeah, Abyssal is going to be annoying. Um, just as a card. I feel like Devour is going to be something that's super, super scary to watch out for. The one thing that I'm actually super excited for is the amount of Targon cards that are actually within this deck list. They have,
Mm-hmm.
of course, there's Hush, right? It's kind of like the new Deny. I remember when I first started playing this game, whenever I would play a spell, I always knew that the opponent had a Deny in his hand. But now you got to kind of switch your mindset from Deny to Hush, because Hush, it's fleeting. You can use it multiple times in a round. It's super annoying. It costs 3 mana, and he's taking 2 of them here, which can be a nuisance for sure.
Even more risky, of course, now with the addition of Lulu is the 4-point Whimsy. You know, it's an Ionia spell as well. It's 4 points as well. You know, you may be biting your nails, like anxious about this deny coming out, and instead your 10-12 follower gets turned into a 1-1 squirrel, and there's nothing you can do about it. So a lot of really powerful control tools with this new expansion. We do actually have Dango taking the Lulu with the support aggro list, the Lulu and Shen together, not running the Whimsy, but packing some of those more kind of like Demacia focused, those early game Demacia units in combination with the support package. We did get to see this list during the qualifiers, but I'm excited to see how it matches up against these
I think
Nautilus
the
lists.
most consistent deck list that I've seen throughout every single patch so far in Runeterra, I know this game's only been out for a couple months now, is the Demacia, right? And there's a lot of great, great, amazing cards that are within the Demacia tree, and it's just so reliable to take here in the early game. You have Fleet Feather Tracker, Bright Steel Protector to combo that. War Chefs is great. There's LeBron. I haven't seen LeBron ever since the days of Fiora Shen. So I'm excited that it's actually coming back. Genevieve has been a new one that's been thrown in there. She's usually paired up with Grizzled Ranger, but Grizzled Ranger isn't going to be ran here in this deck, and as well Relentless Pursuit. Who can deny that card?
The ability to rally and regain the attack token either on your defensive turn or additionally on your offensive turn, especially with a scout package like the Genevieve, that's the ability to attack 3 times in one turn, you know, and in the right situation, that can be absolutely devastating. But it looks like our players are actually ready to get set up into the second game here. We're just waiting to give them a go ahead. And then we can get to see how these decks match up. I'm really excited to see what they're choosing to bring here for their first match. Saved One, what do you think the ideal matchup is for Dango in this game 1?
So right now he's hovering. You guys can't see it in Twitch, but we can see the preview of both of their feeds. What Dango is doing is he's right now he's hovering the Twisted Fate Swain, and he's kind of locked it in for the time being. However, the one deck I wanted to see was the Braum Nautilus, and that's exactly what David is going to be pulling out here to showcase for us. I have no idea how this deck is going to work. The only thing that I personally have seen that can really synergize with each other is going to be Starlit and Braum. How Starlit is going to start getting his charges over towards Braum is the big thing that we have to watch out for. But the starting hands end up coming through for both these players.
If we can actually see here in Dango's hand, 3 Ravenous Flocks. Very interesting control start here. Going to knock away one of those. Definitely doesn't need all that removal in the starting hand. Not really finding what he's looking for here. I think definitely, as we've seen kind of in previous matches, these Nautilus decks, like if they go late, they stomp. And Dango just doesn't have the tools in his starting hand to kind of put that pressure on yet. Top decking into the Leviathan, not what you want to see on your first turn.
No, you definitely do not. However, over on the other side, I do love what David um has at least first decked for himself. He does have the 1 mana where you toss. He does actually end up just passing his turn. I don't think he exactly wants to toss just yet. Instead, just uses a spell.
I think what David's doing is David knows his win con, and knowing
Yeah.
that Dango hasn't put anything out onto the board, he's taking his sweet time to get these sea monsters leveled up. Going for
Yep.
that treasure chest to kind of get his sea monsters reduce their cost a little bit. We can actually see the Devourer in hand went from a 6 to a 5, and getting that card out a turn earlier than your opponent might expect can be really, really, really dangerous. That
Mhm.
4 damage removal, basically the ability to obliterate anything with less health, really powerful removal threat in the Bilgewater package.
I do think that Dango kind of wiped the sweat off of his forehead because in his initial draw he had no early game cards, and then finally now he does place out one, which is definitely really good. Having a petty officer on the board, with just a little bit of damage, is amazing, and then also David defending with his own card as well.
And you may, as the viewer, especially if you're new to Runeterra, you may be looking at that trade and thinking, why would you ever want to trade a 1/1 unit into a
Yeah.
3/3 like that, or a 3/2 like that? But I think this is really kind of David really showing that he knows his deck's win con, and he knows that all he has to do is just not take damage until that Nautilus comes online. He doesn't need to have a stronger board right now. He just needs to survive. So taking these kind of chump trades early on isn't a risk for him. He'd rather have that Nexus health. So really good reads and really good deck knowledge, rather, to know that that's the play he needs to make.
I really do like this play as well, using the TF to do 2 damage instead of uh, dealing 3 and stunning an opponent. But with that 2 damage going out, it means that Braum is slowly starting to level up. He also ends up summoning a Poro 3/3 with Overwhelm if he wants to. But there's the Ravenous Flock. The turn 1 pays off, and Braum's
I was
dead.
gonna say, watching the Twisted Fate come out, I'm like, why are you helping the Brown Quest? And I totally forgotten about the
Yeah.
2 Ravenous Flocks
Yep.
in his hand. Dango knowing that Braum is going to represent a massive threat if it stays alive, and clearing it out immediately. Not really worried about this Poro threat here, just knowing that he needs to shut down these big blockers.
Yeah, this is scary. This is when it starts to get a little bit scary for David, because now TF's out, now Swain is out. They're both starting to level up. Swain, of course, can passively level up within his hand, but getting a fearsome 3/6 on the board is great. Devour. Does he want to devour the TF? That was the big question.
I actually like this play from David. I know usually you want to save the Devourer, wait till you hit deep and use it as a really massive removal. But this
Yeah.
Twisted Fate, Twisted Fate is one of those champions that can only meet its level up condition if it's on the board. And making the read that Dango doesn't have the health boost in hand, clearing out that TF now before he loses that opportunity later, shutting down that level up. I think that's exactly how David needs to play this game in order to preserve his Nexus health.
Yep. Just going to use a little bit of spell mana now. Make it rain is an option that he can play here on the board. And I feel like he definitely wants to do that. But we got to watch out because there is still a frostbite that is available just in case anything does come out. And I feel like David expects it.
Well, yeah, I mean, David's considering definitely using the frostbite, but choosing not to do it, actually losing his Devourer to the Make It Rain. Oh wait, actually, my bad. I totally forgot about the sequencing here. Making that hard read and holding onto the frostbite, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, that was my mistake there. The fast spell speed into the burst spell speed. The fast spell, even though he queues it up second, it comes out first. So then the burst spell has that time to react and get in there right before that Make It Rain drops.
That's probably one of my favorite animations in the game. I know that with the Targon patch, a lot of great new animations came in, but it's the sound effect is satisfying. I know that's kind of weird to say, but
No, it's great. Swain is definitely one of those cooler
Yeah.
champions from that Bilgewater package. Obviously, some really amazing synergies there. When he came out, he kind of just dominated the meta. There was Swain Sejuani, there was Swain Misfortune, there was Swain Ezreal, even some really exciting Swain Yasuo. Even there it is, the Swain Yasuo. Getting that stun combination with that leveled up Yasuo. But seeing him here with the Swain and the Twisted Fate, using the Twisted Fate and using that Bilgewater package to just spam low-cost spells on the Nexus. Bilgewater having a lot of really easy ways of pinging that Nexus down with things like a Warning Shot, just to kind of set up for the Swain level up.
Now, this is a lot slower of a game. Last time we ended up seeing Spencer, Zingbet, they were already done their first game. I think halfway through their second
Yeah.
at this point. But this is so incredibly slow, 20-17. And these guys are using all of the time. And I was telling you actually this morning that a lot of these great players, they will take their time a lot more with their turns because they go through all of the options in their head. What damage can I do? And what's my best play?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at David's hand, we can kind of go through that thought process ourselves. The Abyssal Eye looks really good, playing right on curve, playing that 4 mana to consume the rest of that 4 mana. But exactly, just as we're about to say here, David choosing to go for the Jawl Hunters, reserving that spell mana so he has the ability to jettison and toss and put himself in deep range if he needs it. Unfortunately, the red card coming out from the second Twisted Fate here, killing that Jawl Hunters, makes Swain lives to see another day.
And this is interesting. He actually puts his Starlit out on the board to attack, and he knows that his opponent doesn't exactly want to take any more damage. The Swain already at 4 HP, didn't want to take an extra 2, but he wants to try and get deep as best as possible, and that's exactly what he's going to do with Jettison.
He's going to double jettison here with the Starlit Seer. As you were saying, at first I wasn't really seeing the synergy, but this double Starlit Seer means +2/2 to whatever unit David has on top of his deck.
Yeah. And he blocks the 2 damage, which is still really good. And knowing how slow these guys have been playing the game, you have to at least try and block as much damage as possible. But it's not looking too great. He's got to get deep so soon, or else Dango just takes over.
I don't think he's that far off. We actually see him. He's 2 cards away from deep. That means this Abyssal Eye is actually going to push him to deep on his next turn. That Nautilus coming out is a 13/13 with tough, fearsome, and reducing all sea monsters in hand. And it's actually the Nautilus that gets the +2 buff. This Nautilus coming out, when it levels up, it's going to be a 15/15 Nautilus.
Yep, just deal the 3 damage to your opponent's face. Go for the long haul. Don't go for anything too crazy, and you'll definitely start to live a lot longer.
You can actually see here, looking at Dango's screen, he's checking the deck. He's checking to see how far away he is from deep. He knows that David is very close to deep. Was actually considering committing the Noxian Fervor there for the kill and held back, knowing that there might be a chance that there's another Jettison in hand. We've only seen 2 of them come out. That third Jettison comes out for that 4 health boost. That's a waste of 3 mana. But choosing instead to go for the Leviathan and pull that Swain into his hand, turning into the Ravenous Flock there, just to have that extra utility moving into turn 9.
Nautilus can level up if he does want to place it down here on the board, which is probably his best option, just to try and deny. The only problem that he ends up facing is now Leviathan is going to hit the enemy Nexus on this turn. Both of these cards are going to be getting stunned right off the bat. The one thing that's great though is he does have Nautilus's passive spell. Don't know what it's called, but if you target it onto someone, it knocks them back into the opponent's deck. But who cares?
Yeah,
who cares about what I
being able to shuffle a unit back into the deck, submerge that unit back into their deck with the Riptide.
Right.
But actually choosing to go for the 1-point Devourer, you may have noticed the Devourer dropped its cost to 1, typically a 6-cost unit. This is really the power of Nautilus when this gets to these later stages of the game. And being able to drop the Devourer and kill that Swain before the Leviathan procs that 3 damage on Nexus, as you were saying, so his units actually don't get stunned.
Yep, and that's really good. The one top deck, though, that is good is going to be the one card that stuns. He also has the Riptide Rex if he wants to use that here. The only problem is that when you're facing really strong cards, like when you're facing a 6/6, when you're facing a 15/15, what good does Riptide Rex actually do at that point?
Yeah, and I actually like this play from Dango, doing that quick math, that Leviathan coming out, it actually represents lethal right here. David's going to have to commit a response, probably in that Riptide, to shuffle one of these Leviathans back in the deck. Unfortunately for Dango, this is really smart play, but unfortunately for him, once that Riptide comes out and one of those Leviathans gets stuck back into the deck, he's not going to have the Swain out, and that means that David's actually going to be able to hit for free. He's not going to get stunned on this turn.
Yeah, that was kind of his saving grace there, is just having the second Leviathan out. Now he's got to start rethinking what else can he actually start to do during this next turn. He also doesn't exactly want to attack here. I think that would be very silly. So just pass your turn and see what you can do next turn.
So David, you know, kind of knowing that this is his last turn, throwing all his units out onto the board. He knows he needs to make a lethal push on this next turn before that Leviathan gets its second strikeout.
Deal 3 damage to anything. It's the one card that I personally hate the most, because in the Noxus burn deck way back when, that used to be the lethal. But Noxus Fever, my
And then
goodness.
Noxian Fervor coming out
Yeah.
for David, or for Dangle rather. It looks like this is going to be the end. I think
Exactly.
David knows he's about to accept his defeat here. Actually,
Tough.
game one about to go to Dangle's way.
Yep. What else can he? Yeah, he can't exactly do anything here unless no, not even unless. It's just the start of the round, right?
It's
That's
over,
it.
and
Yeah,
he
he
knows.
surrenders.
And the surrender comes
He
out
surrenders.
from David. You know, he knows that the game's over. He knows that 3 damage is going to come out from the Leviathan at the start of his next turn. And Dango actually taking game number 1 into this Braum Nautilus list.
Yep. Sometimes going for the standard meta deck is the one that's the best. However, he immediately picks Braum once again, and now we get to see Shen Lulu. This is gonna be fun. We're heading right back into the game.
The players don't want to waste a second. You know, David's all fired up, Dango's all fired up after that win here. Moving on to that. David choosing to stick with his Braum Nautilus list here. We're gonna have to see how this Lulu Shen deck fares. I definitely think the Swain TF, you know, has the stronger kind of mid game into this list, and you know that was a really favorable matchup. But now into these double Nautilus lists, Dango has to win with this Lulu deck, and actually drawing an almost flawless starting hand here with the double Fleet Feather into the War Chefs, into the Flower Child, you know, with no supports in hand, actually opting for the Flower Child. Definitely an interesting start. I'm kind of curious as to why he went with that over the Fleet Feather. You know, the Fleet Feather represents one damage. It gets the challenger once you play that second unit. So interesting choice here from Dango. But I guess knowing that this Flower Child is that engine he wants to get set up on the board sooner rather than later.
I think I don't think that David had any spells. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have any spells with this deck that he could actually take out a 1 health card from. So I kind of agree with you, but 1 damage, you know, it's in the late game, it can make the difference, like 1 damage difference for sure. In the early game, not too much. I don't think he's too nervous. He just kind of wanted to get his support allies onto the field as fast as possible so he can start dealing a lot more damage. But Starlit Seer comes out as well as Coral Creatures.
I think actually, you know, kind of in retrospect, like looking at that play, I think Dango really analyzed his curve well, and you know, knew he had the War Chefs in hand, knew that he would want to set it up on the Flower Child, but choosing actually here to boost the Lauren Protege and get that challenge off onto the Starlit Seer. You know, Dango is famous for making me correct myself as we play here. You know, often changing his mind after he's committed himself to a play. You know, it's going through that thought process there. But obviously, there's a number of ways to approach this, and I think actually we're finally resolving himself, boosting that Flower Child. You know, playing into that support tag, and really just doing whatever he can to put some damage, some pressure down on David's board.
And that's why these guys are such good players, right? Is that they do every single option that they possibly can. They put it all out on the board and they say, all right, how would this look? Right? In your head, it could look one way, but on the board, it looks a completely different way. He changes it up a couple times and then ends up finally going for it. Elixir of Iron to save Starlit Seer and also giving a little bit more damage into the deck, the cards in his deck as well. But a beautiful, beautiful start coming through here for this Demacian deck.
We're actually seeing, we didn't get to see it last time, but we're actually getting to see it this time. David pulling the Zap Spray Fin, you know, really interesting choice with this deck. You know, it comes with the Attune tag, which puts more spell mana, allowing him to play things like the Jettison, like the Lure of the Depths, but also being an elusive attacker, you know, maybe poking out some damage early on where the rest of his deck doesn't really have that ability. You know, really interesting choice here from David to include this card in his list. Dango obviously running something a little bit more traditional, kind of with that Demacia low health unit package. But here comes the Jal Hunters starting to put some pressure down on Dango's board. He has the mana for the Riposte in hand and chooses instead to drop the Fleet Feather Tracker. So he's okay losing whatever he has on his board.
Yeah, he's looking for next turn, and I think that's the main mindset is just look towards next turn. He knows that Jal Hunters is just going to trade 1 for 1. And he's still going to have the board advantage, even no matter what happens. He's got another fleet tracker in his hand. He's got another War Chefs in his hand. He's not too nervous about it. If he needs to use tough, then he can. Ooh, the round was actually about to end, but No, he wants to put just one more Feather Tracker on the board.
That's a really interesting call from Dango again as well. A lot of players, especially in these upper echelons of the ladder, really value carrying that 3 spell mana into the next round. We can actually see David here, really playing around that 3 spell mana. He has that extra mana queued up, ready to transition into the next round, but actually playing an additional unit and giving David kind of the call here to push in with that Jol Hunters. He wasn't going to attack, and after playing that second Fleet Feather, he was happy making that trade. And here comes the War Chefs. Really scary board here from Dango moving into this turn 5.
Yeah, Jettison takes out Devourer of Depths, so he only has 2 more left in his deck. Usually when you try and toss a couple cards, you're mainly looking for those lower end cards to toss, but wasting no time whatsoever. Just wanting to put all of his pressure out on the board. Challenges the last one, just so that his Laurent can survive and do a lot of face damage. And he's got nothing to respond. I don't think. No, he doesn't have any spells.
I mean, and this is exactly kind of what Dango needs to be doing here in this match, is knowing that he's racing against the clock here, that Nautilus being that big, strong finisher. As you were mentioning with that Devourer of the Depths, obviously it gets tossed, but when the Nautilus comes out, it reshuffles all those sea monsters back into the deck. So that toss, kind of being scary now, losing these valuable resources now. But once that Nautilus comes back, they're all going to come back and they're all going to be reduced by 4 cost. So Dango knows this, and he knows he has to win now before it's too late.
Yeah, he does have. What's good for David is that he does have a kindly Tavern Keeper. He could heal his own Nexus by 3, and he's got 2 of them, so 6. And that's not a horrible thing to start thinking about. The main thing though is that he wants to maybe save them for the Braum. However, he's not exactly getting too lucky with his draws here. Lulu, but coming out onto the board or not onto the board, but into the hand of Dango.
And I mean, just looking at these hands, like if this Lulu comes out before the next turn, that could just be lethal. And it's a really scary situation. After seeing that kindly Tavern Keeper comes out, he knows there's no Devourer of the Depths available to play. This Lulu is safe from harm. And Dango's just going to push for the win right at the start of his next turn. It's likely that we're just going to see him attack before the turn even starts.
Yeah, and he can use actually no, he's just gonna pass his turn and just go straight up to the face.
Yeah, there was the
opponent.
option of single combat there. The only issue with single combat is that he trades 1 for 1.
Yep.
If there was a value trade to make with a single combat, that definitely would have been the play. But since there wasn't really a strong single combat target, Dango actually just choosing to pass and move into this next turn. We'll see if he just goes to the strike here. I'm really curious to see what he does. That Genevieve representing a ton of damage if he plays it out, but it looks like he's just going to go to attack.
Yeah, and Lulu needing to level up very soon as well. She already has a couple of supported ally stacks towards that as well. Having Tough in your hand can be really good, but he's thinking about every single option. Lulu first, then the Feather Tracker. No, he's looking at every option. I love these players.
Dango likes to mess with you, man. He likes to play. But no, I think definitely, especially with these supports, your attack order is very important. And as we mentioned during the qualifiers, for those of you that aren't very familiar with Runeterra's mechanic, when you have a keyword like support or like attack, it triggers before the damage is dealt. So this Lulu is going to level up here before this damage even goes through.
Yeah, and an awesome animation too. Just to kind of add in that as well. I also really love picks coming through at the start of every single round. It adds barrier to one of your allies. But what happens here? Oh, he's got the Nautilus thing.
It's lethal. We've got 5. Oh, just kidding. There's the Riptide there. I missed that. Yeah, the Riptide coming out onto the Flower Child here. Just going to hold David in this game for a little while longer. But Dango does have a number of responses in hand. We might see that riposte come out. He's got 4 plus 3 damage at 7. He's actually 1 damage short even with the riposte. So choosing to hold his spell mana and wait for a better opportunity to go for the kill.
Wanting to he's showing us on stream that he's kind of face palming because he knew the lethal that he had and he kind of wants to get on into the finals. He sees the 20-4 and wants to close this game out ASAP because he knows that the deep deck can definitely escalate if something ends up going wrong.
Funny that you mentioned that, because actually after yesterday's qualifier or Saturday's qualifier, I had a chance to speak with Dango, and the one thing that he was very, very upset about, you unfortunately missed this save one, but Dango missed lethal in one of his qualifier games and actually ended up losing the set by 1 damage because he chose not to riposte, and he was very upset about that misread. So I think flashing that Darius emote over to us here on the caster's bench, it kind of seems like he's just reliving his darkest fears and darkest moments.
And this is how it starts as well. He's got the Abyssal Eye, and he's got this card. What's it called? The Zap Spray Fin. All you need is a little bit of elusive, and your day just becomes a lot better if you're the guy that's holding them.
Unfortunately for David, he's got all these big units, but with a handful of units and all these really expensive units too, your mana kind of just disappears. He has 8 mana, but he's only really able to play like a few cards. Whereas Dango sitting on 11 mana and all these cheap spells, he can basically play his whole hand here. And when it comes down to a lethal situation like this, usually you want to hold that spell mana or that mana, but Dango knows that this is his time to strike. While there's no mana and there's nothing on board, this is where you go for that lethal push.
He wants to go for the Abyssal Eye here, and the only problem with doing that is that it gets your opponent, or it allows your opponent to play a card, and that's exactly
the Shen comes out. The Shen bows out. David accepting his defeat here. Our second 2-0 of the finals. Dango going to take his sweet time with that Scout Genevieve to clear out some units and then strike with his full board. Really awesome performance from Dango, showing up with these aggro lists. A nice clean 2-0 for the Lulu Shen for the TF swing.
Yep, just put them all out on the board. Allow Lulu to do her thing, and then I always love looking at the negative. Negative 22 is what he ended up at. I always love looking at the negative.
I mean, I'm really happy that I had an awesome opportunity earlier with an Aurelian Soul and an Expedition going minus 75 after swinging with all those Celestials. It's so much fun to see a Nexus explode. It's kind of like in League when they surrender right after you blow up their Nexus and it blows up 3 times. That's kind of how it feels when you're playing Runeterra and you get those negative points. So Dango going to be very happy to push David into the negative there and take that 2-0.
Yeah, I love what we saw out of Dango. The Lulu Shen coming out was super, super clean. Playing Flower Child first round, then having War Chefs to back it up was awesome. Having Lulu passively level up within the deck. We didn't get to see the Shen too much, but with Shen being buffed way before, it allows him to really show up in these support style decks, and I love how Riot ended up doing that as well. We didn't exactly get to see the Lucian Misfortune because it was banned out from Dango, but the Swain TF weirdly was actually a pretty fast game. A 20-minute game for a Swain TF deck, not that bad.
No, for sure. And as we were saying, a lot of these players running aggro decks, we actually got to see a little bit of control gameplay this time around. And really kind of fascinating stuff. Unfortunately for David, his Nautilus decks, they murked the qualifiers, but they're just not able to pull the pace that he needed in this finals. He will have a chance at redemption, though, in our 3rd place match. We'll be coming up to you. We're just going to take a quick little break, and we'll get to see David versus Zingbet in the 3rd place round. Welcome back, everyone. We're moving into our bronze match here versus David versus Zingbet. We just had our first two matches of the day, two crazy fast 2-0 series, just absolutely insane games. This third place match is going to be really, really, really exciting to watch against these two titans here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I feel like we have to wait just for the bans to eventually go through. Of course, we see both of the deck lists on our second monitors, and we'll let you guys know what's getting banned and what's not. But the one thing that me and you were quickly talking about just before we ended up going live was the two deep decks that both of these guys have built for themselves. And David has a little bit more kind of variety in terms of his spells within his deck, and Zingbet, he's definitely running a standard one.
Yeah, David, with this regular deep deck, choosing to take the Ruination and Vengeance, big kind of removal spells that you don't see in Zingbet's list.
Yeah, he's got the Vengeance here on the board for himself, which can take out a unit just straight up, and then Ruination. Right, it just kills every single unit on the board. And I feel like if David is going to be going for that 9 mana kind of escape card, then it can be pretty good. However, towards that area of the game is when you do start to see David pull out the Devourer, when you start to pull out the Shipwreck, right? When you start to pull out the Nautilus.
Yeah.
So for sure.
Exactly. You actually see the Nightfall aggro deck getting banned away, and from Zingbet and from David, the Targon list with the Nautilus. As we were saying, David brought 3 Nautilus lists, but his Nautilus Targon set is going to get banned away. Interesting that would be the choice as opposed to the standard deep. The standard deep, it's the strongest one because it just is. Right, like we were talking earlier about how that Maokai, may not be the ideal pick, but the ability to toss units from the bottom of your deck with that passive, with those saplings, and really burn through your deck even faster and get that extra win condition with the Maokai, that sapling dancing on your deck and taunting you as your cards just fly away.
Yeah.
It's a really scary threat and a card that comes online a lot earlier than some of these other choices. So interesting bans for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a method to the madness here, so we'll have to see what Zingbet is kind of planning with these attacks here. But that Nightfall aggro deck getting banned, my heart hurts just a little bit. I was really hoping to see that getting picked up, but unfortunately, Nocturne and Diana are no more for the rest of this tournament.
Yeah, he had a great showing on it, and I feel like his early game with that deck was really, really good. It's just he kind of fell a little bit short, and we could already see what one of these players is going to be running, which is just Zingbet. He's going to be running the TF Ezreal deck just to start this all off, and I think he ended up running. Yeah, he ran it versus the Scouts and almost won with it. The only problem for Zingbet was that he drew what was it, 4 or 5 4 mana cards. So it didn't exactly help him out here in the last game, or in the last set. But maybe here you could get Jagged Butcher, could get Black Market Merchant, Dreadway could be really good for turn number 2 as well. So Zingbet, he's got a lot of things up his sleeve too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I do want to compare quickly though, David's standard deep or regular deep deck versus Zingbet's standard deep. The standard deep deck actually choosing to tech in Fading Memories. Now, this is a really interesting choice, I think, with this deck. Typically, you see Fading Memories picked up in a deck where you need kind of low-cost cards to power up something like a Nightfall aggro deck, for example, where you need zero-cost spell to cast so you can proc that Nightfall. But Zingbet actually choosing to combo it with his Deep Sea Monsters. And it looks like the players are ready, and we're going to jump into our first game of our bronze match series. These players, like whoever gets knocked out here, goes home with nothing. Winner gets third place. Last player gets nothing. So they're going to be fighting their hearts out for this win. And as you said, the Ezreal Twisted Fate is going to be taking on the Standard Deep.
Yeah, and the Standard Deep, at least coming through for David, is going to be pretty powerful. Even in his level 1, he's got Drag, which is exactly what you want on turn number 1. He's got Vile Feast just for a little bit of extra mana or extra health for himself, and can also play down the Spider. But Jagged Butcher, even though he does not have it plundered, it's just going to play it down on the field and maybe even 2 free damage.
This is again kind of as we were saying, these high level players making these calls. Typically, especially I find when working with lower level players, they get caught up in this trap of wanting to get their keywords, maximize value on other keywords. I can't play this plunder card unless I can plunder. I can't play this quick attack card unless I'm going to get the highest value in a trade here or something. But these high level players knowing that what it matters more is playing to your win con and getting these units out early, putting pressure on this late game deep deck with that non-plundered Jagged Butcher, just the stronger play to go. And even forming a unit here with the Petty Officer, really building up the strength of his board.
Yeah, he's just going to use the Vile Feast in order to take out the Jagged Butcher. I believe you said that earlier. And just regen a little bit of HP for himself. But this is obviously the most ideal. It's just use the Spider to defend versus the 3/2. And then now you can just maybe use a little bit of lifesteal. But yeah, he does. He does end up playing it, which is really good too.
But when you want to get these toss units out earlier rather than later, as we were saying, it can be unfortunate to toss heavy units from the bottom of your deck. But at the end of the day, there's actually nothing you can do to avoid that. Either they're at the bottom of your deck and you don't get to see them, or they're getting tossed out the window. So playing these toss units early is obviously the correct choice. Really build up closer to that Nautilus level up win condition. Tossing does not toss champions, just followers and spells. So really hunting for that Nautilus and trying to find it as soon as you can.
Yep, he does have the option now to place down the Maokai. I don't know how useful it actually is very early on like this. He could just save it and use the spell mana later on. But at this
Maokai
point,
generates a lot of value when you play those extra units. I think what hesitation is here, though, is that he knows there's a thermogenic beam in the deck, and we know that it's in the hand of Zingbat. So playing this Maokai here could just be an instant death, and actually choosing to go for the Jettison instead, making the hand read, choosing not to play the Maokai here. Just a very safe, cautious play from David.
Yep. Ezreal also going to be placed here on the board, at least. Oh, hold on. It's not. Just wait. It might. Now it is. There you go. Ezreal.
On us.
Ezreal on the board means that now on his attacking turn, he gets just a little bit of extra damage, right? Even though it's just +1, he does get a Mystic Shot now, and that's also -6 going to the board of his opponent. There is the possibility that he could use Withering Wail. I believe that's what that spell is called.
Yeah, the Withering Wail, though, typically is something you want to use once you have like a little bit less, kind of like your health is a little lower, or you can get more value out of the clear. I mean, David's considering it, of course, but honestly, in this situation, getting something down like the Abyssal Eye here to counter out that Ezreal, or even just playing the Salvage to kind of toss might be a stronger play. But it looks like David actually, yeah, okay, good. David almost proved me wrong there for a second, and then ended up going my way. Definitely going to reserve some of that mana. Actually choosing to pass here and not play any cards. I wonder to see if Zingbat here is just going to let the turn end, but I think he knows that Zingbat wants to use some of this mana. Actually swinging around and ending around there.
He doesn't end up using his Mystic Shot, the fleeting Mystic Shot. He could have, and nothing would have really happened, right? He wouldn't have lost any spell mana. Maybe a little bit of a misplay coming from him, but when you're in this type of tournament, when you're going for third place, I don't want to say the nerves can get to you because I feel like these guys are very comfortable at this point during this tournament, but sometimes you just don't exactly think of everything.
I think the logic behind Zingbat's choice there to not play that card is that once he plays that Mystic Shot, he does have to commit to that 2 mana, and then David has the ability to play another card. So choosing not to play this Mystic Shot and just letting the turn end there, he got his 6 damage in. He's happy with that, and it forces David to kind of, he's the one that's losing out. David was trying to bait out some of Zingbat's mana, and Zingbat says, no, you know what? Neither one of us is going to get to play now. Yeah. And, kind of putting his foot down there.
He just allowed him to go deep. He nabbed an extra card, and he just forced his opponent onto deep. And now he sadly takes 6 damage to the face.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing that I actually hadn't considered is these nabs are actually going to be kind of detrimental to Zingbat. He's playing towards David's win con with these nabs here. Unfortunately, I mean, there's nothing really you can do about it. Obviously, it's going to David running 3 deep deck lists. You're going to bump into this one time or another, and I guess Zingbat choosing to play this in the first game, hoping he can clutch that win so we can have a better matchup in the third round.
He's going to be drawing a whole lot of cards here, a lot of sea monsters for sure, and the Atrocity as well comes out as a 5 mana spell card, which is huge, absolutely huge. But now is really when David has to start closing out this game because he sees how low he's getting, and there you go. There's the Nautilus. It comes out finally as a top deck.
Yeah, and that Atrocity comboed with the Nautilus represents 13 damage to the Nexus that, as far as Zingbat's concerned, is completely unavoidable. Some decks might be able to run a deny or clear out the Nautilus before that ability can go off. But Zingbat running a bunch of low-cost removal, playing this Ezreal deck, he doesn't have a response for this Atrocity. So this Atrocity could basically be lethal for David like within the next 2 turns.
Yeah, this could be absolutely huge. And the Withering Whale just allowing him to just survive a little bit longer. And like you said, it could be lethal very, very soon. Both of these guys have insane cards going into this late game for sure. The one thing I'm really scared about is next turn Nautilus going to be coming out. And then, of course, there is the Atrocity to top it all off.
Zingbet kind of filling up his board here, putting out some blockers. Actually, rather than blockers, my bad. I think what Zingbet's really trying to do is go for an attack here, like on as soon as the attack token flips. He's trying to start filling up his board now, so as soon as it hits turn 9, he can go on the offensive because he knows it's down to the wire here. As soon as this Nautilus comes out, it's almost game over. And David, actually, interesting enough, not choosing to play the Nautilus here, just going for the quick strike with the Abyssal Eye.
It's because he wants to play, I believe he wants to play Nautilus now and then Atrocity next turn. And that would secure the victory. So, yes. There we go. Big brain. Big brain saved one, I hope. Unless he completely...
You're probably right. I don't really know what options Zingbet has in his hand. I mean, he does have the Atrocity of his own. He does have an Ezreal in hand, which could represent a lot of damage quite quickly. But we're gonna have to see. Unfortunately, making the misread, going for the Thermogenic Beam, this is gonna cost them. Taking out that Abyssal Eye is definitely the right call, but not when the attack token is about to flip. He's on the offensive. He needs that spell mana, and Zingbet, this is gonna be a close one for sure.
Yeah, he's hoping that the Atrocity ends up going through, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Yeah, that was unfortunate.
But having an Atrocity of his own, actually, David coming out with the Shen, but maybe coming out a little proactively. We have the Atrocity here. Is it enough?
Ooh, that's kind of
no, but no other spells in hand. It's not going to be enough.
Yeah, that's it. That's it, I think.
He's going to do 7 damage to face, but that Nautilus is going to pop first, and Zingbet's going to fall. Game number 1 going David's way.
He also had the Riptide. If anything were to happen, if there was the possibility, and he just kind of plays it just for fun. Just for fun, put down the Riptide, and then just end this game.
Just a crazy turn of events there, back and forth, back and forth. David ends up only surviving with 2 health on his Nexus by the end of that.
Yeah, and very fast games even as well.
That Riptide taking Zingbet away to the dark side. It's just a rough game 1 for sure. But really exciting stuff. I'm really excited to see how this game 2 goes. And the players, they're not going to waste a second. They're going to jump in right back into it. David, hearing that game 1, going in with the Braum Nautilus again against the Ezreal Twisted Fate.
Yeah, the Ezreal Twisted Fate now needs to be a little bit better. I feel like in the last game, it wasn't too effective, and he was kind of riding off of his opponent's cards, right? The whole nab aspect and getting your opponent to deep wasn't too great very early on. Drag coming out, Jettison as well. That's huge. Toss 2, draw 2 out of Salvage is great. Kindly Tavern Keeper is an amazing 3 cost as well. I absolutely love this board coming in from David.
A really strong mulligan. Zingbet, interestingly enough, choosing to mulligan away the Twisted Fate.
Yeah.
Obviously hunting for something, probably these spells here in hand to get that Ezreal leveled up. The turn 1 Thermogenic Beam, he's questing hard for that Ezreal. Really an interesting choice there for sure. We're going to get to see clearing that board and immediately going into the Nexus Strike with the Chempunk Pickpocket. Probably the logic there behind the Thermogenic Beam was to clear out that blocker, but unfortunately for Zingbet, David responds with yet another Dreg Dredgers, already having tossed 6 cards out of his deck. He's about halfway to deep already.
Yep, it reminds me of the Ezreal Karma and the Heimerdinger Videx, the turn 1 Thermogenic Beam, because later on in the game you still have more Thermos to place out. But kindly Tavern Keeper could be getting played here, but what do you heal? Nothing. So he might just relax. And you were even saying that he's halfway towards deep, which is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the logic behind this kindly Tavern Keeper here is that you don't really want to show that Jal Hunters and leave it open as a threat to removal, especially with Zingbet running this Ezreal list, having that Static Shock, that Mystic Shot, that Make It Rain, all in hand. Even just the threat of it being in deck. Obviously, David can't see Zingbet's hand the way we can, but just knowing that those threats are available to him, not wanting to play that Jal Hunters unless he's going to be able to get some value out of it, and just playing that Kindly Tavern Keeper down as a body, as a blocker to keep his Nexus a little bit more secure as he moves into these later rounds.
Ooh, there's Starlet. Starlet is drawn now finally, and there's the Mystic Shot. So that's the control that Zingbet wanted to pull out. I don't think Zingbet wants to exactly go for a no win game. So he might try and take this to 3.
Oh, absolutely. Zingbet, like we said, he came in out of the qualifiers going 4-0. Really amazing shows with that Nightfall aggro list, with this Ezreal Twisted Fate list. We haven't really got to see him perform to like the top of his capability here in this tournament. Just some really unlucky matchups. So he's going to be putting his all in here, really fighting for that third place spot. He really wants that Cougar bunker. He really wants that mouse bungee for sure.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. And now he's got to start getting towards deep, and that's his major win con now, is just kind of stall this game out as best as possible and get towards the later mana type of spells.
And we're going to see a lot of low unit spell spam from David, really trying to fill up his board here, but setting up Zingbet for the perfect Make It Rain here. Unfortunately, missing the ping on the Fleet Feather tracker. He is going to have the Static Shock next turn in hand to clear out those 2 units, but it's not going to be too little too late. And the Jettison comes out again for David. He's got to be deep here.
No, it's very close. Insanely close. I think he's like 1 or 2 away now.
David's going to be deep before turn 6. This is absolutely insane.
That's crazy for sure. And it was all thanks to his early draws, right? He got the salvage round 1, he got the jettison round 1, and then he had one more jettison. But now he's got no more defense for himself here. And I might have spoken too soon because he got Devour. So just put Devour down, take out one of the 3 cost units, or the 3 damage units.
Really just putting some pressure down. Obviously, that Chempunk Pickpocket representing a big threat with this Ezreal list, pulling a new spell back to his hand every time, and having these low-cost spells that he can just spam out over and over and over and over and over again is really going to put a lot of pressure down on David's board. So knowing that even though it had less health, better to remove that than anything else really in this situation.
And the thermal beam coming out just to take out the Devour, and now the board is completely clean. 20-13 is going to be the score here going into round number 7, and he's deep. So you predicted it, you said it. Nautilus is an option for sure, and that's exactly what he's going to place, just straight in this one.
That's insane that Nautilus is going to be leveled up the turn he can play it. Like the very turn that he is able to play it, it comes out as a 13-13 unit with nothing on board, and with Zingbet having no units that he can place. He's scrolling those Riptide Rexes. He's furious that he's 1 mana away. There's nothing that he can do about this Nautilus. He has that Ezreal leveled up. He's showing us on camera. He's got Ezreal leveled up, but there's nothing he can do with it. And pulling into this Devourer, he's denying it away from David, but it's nothing that he can do. He's actually considering the surrender here.
Oh, he did.
A little proactive. Hopefully, Zingbet sticks it out. We want to see him play this out. We want to see this go to game 3.
Yeah.
Obviously, we love Runeterra and we want to watch more. But it could just be the end.
It could be. Yeah. With Chempunk coming out, what can you exactly answer Nautilus with? Right now, of course, he does have Riptide Rex. He's got 3 of them in his hand. He could Mystic Shot the enemy Nexus and just try and go for something. The only problem is that Nautilus is not the only card that he has to showcase, at least for David right now. He's got the Abyssal, right? And can very easily place that too.
I think, again, as we were saying earlier, I honestly think Zingbet's greatest weakness in this tournament is just choosing bad matchups. Like, you're never going to get a better matchup, obviously, for this Ezreal Twisted Fate deck, but as a morale boost, be kind to yourself. Take something like the deep deck into game 1, get that win, get that confidence before going into this really misfavored matchup with the Ezreal Twisted Fate into the deep deck. David obviously running 3 deep decks, making it very hard for Zingbet to play into anything else. But this matchup is definitely not what Zingbet wants to be seeing here in this bronze match.
Yeah, and he's deciding if he wants to go for Abyssal Eye. It's a huge possibility, but he's currently looking at his own deck and just seeing what exactly can I draw that would be super beneficial to me. He's thinking about the Winter's Breath if he can draw that, but no, just use Just use the spell shipwreck hoarder. That's huge, and it only costs 6. 2. It only costs 2.
Yeah, these sea monsters are just going to be insanely strong. You know, he
Yeah.
still has the mana to put out yet another one. And Zingbet, you know, forced to play this Devourer without being able to get any effect out of the play ability. You know, this is gonna be it's over for Zingbet really at this point. There's nothing else he left to play.
Oh.
And David actually choosing to go for the Dull Hunters here with the Challenger, top decking into a Devourer, pulling a Devourer into hand. You know, that's just there's not really much to say, and that's all she wrote really for Zingbet. An unfortunate kind of series for him. You know, going 0-2 in 2 matches, really unlucky show for Zingbet. But David clinching that position. Really awesome job from David. You know, these really amazing sets. That first set, unfortunately, not going his way, but here showing us the power of that deep deck, of these deep lists here, and taking that 3rd place spot.
Yeah, I don't think Zingbet exactly expected to go what was it, 0-4 today. But you know what? Sometimes your opponents definitely adjust, and kind of the qualifiers is kind of getting rid. I don't want to call them trash. Getting rid of the trash. That's not exactly the phrase I want to use here.
But
But it's getting.
it's thinning. It's weeding out the rest of the
There you go. There you go. That's a nice way of saying it.
those top tier players, right? And what
Yeah.
we're seeing here is like 4 Masters tier players, like really
Yeah.
high level players, pitting off against each other, and games that series that would typically be like 1-1, 2-2, like these really close series, end up being the absolute stomps. You know, it really kind of depends on what the matchup is, what the draw is, what cards are showing up in people's hands, and just not Zingbet not finding the cards he needed, not finding the matchups he needed in this finals. Really unfortunate for him. But big congratulations to David for claiming that bronze place, claiming that 3rd place spot. He's going to be very happy with that. That's $10 worth of RP going David's way and a Cougar bunker. So big congratulations to David. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to check back in with our finalists to see who claims that number 1 spot in our ICGN Legends of Runeterra tournament. Welcome back, everybody, to our last and final match of the evening of the tournament. It's going to be our grand finals between Dango and Spencer. I'm super pumped to see this matchup. I've been looking forward to this finals matchup like all weekend, really, as I know I'm sure some of our viewers have as well. Daniel, how are you feeling about this matchup going into these last few games here?
Well, what we do know about Dango and Spencer is that they both absolutely love to play the aggro, and you have two decks coming out, at least from Dango, that are both aggro, and then he also has the Swain control. I believe from what you said, both Swain decks were actually banned out, so expect extremely fast games coming into this.
That's correct. Swain has actually been the number one targeted champion for bans throughout the entire duration of this tournament, including qualifiers. Players obviously not a big fan of this champion. You know, Swain provides a massive threat. You know, he's great on the offensive. He's great on the defensive. He has passive damage coming out from his Nexus Strike and the Leviathan. You know, really scary threat. And not a lot of players know how to deal with that / want to deal with that. You know, so instead we're seeing both these players opting for some more aggressive lists. We actually do have Spencer and Dango both running Misfortune decks here. Spencer going with the Quinn, Dango, as we mentioned, with the Lucian. We'll take a quick look at Spencer's deck here with the Quinn Misfortune, choosing to offer a full Demacia list. As opposed to Dango, who's opted to take in a couple more build cards. He's got the Jagged Butcher and the Make It Rain, but Spencer, full Demacia. You know, he's got the single combats, the relentless pursuits, taking in that one back-to-back as kind of that safety tool there, but really going with a more standard build. Savdorn, what do you make of kind of the comparing these two decks? Like, what's your thoughts on some of the changes that these players have made between their deck lists?
You know what? I've been thinking about the Misfortune Quinn deck, and I really feel like you have to win by like turn, like when both players have around 6, 7, 8 mana, or else you just immediately lose the game. Maybe they can prove me wrong, but I feel like with how this meta is really shifting, um, these decks that only really like the strongest card really is Genevieve, and she's a 5/5 scout. 5/5 isn't really all that interesting if you think about all of the other um insanely strong uh cards, but in this case in particular, the only thing that Spencer's scout deck can really face is these two aggro decks that both kind of follow the same pattern, right? They both have very uh low costing cards, and extremely fast games is what we need to expect as well. And I feel like the big thing that's going to shut down this scout deck is going to be the support aggro, right? Putting the Shen, putting the Lulu out on the board, and allowing them um just to be able to barrier literally anything is going
Yeah,
to be very scary.
of course. And moving, like, kind of comparing Spencer's Scout aggro list to
Right.
Dango, like the big change here, as we mentioned earlier, is that Kithria the Bold. You know, not taking the Genevieve and instead opting for the Kithria. It's a stronger body, and quite personally, in my opinion, a stronger passive. You know, the advantage you would take with Genevieve, I mean, aside from the challenger, is the fact that she scouts, which combos really nicely with both Quinn and Misfortune. The problem is with that scout tag is that you lose some of the value that you would get from running like the Kithria with that fearsome, and especially into these aggro lists that run a lot of cheap units that don't necessarily have the power they need to kind of withstand that fearsome tag. You know, these 2 health, 2 power, 1 power units. That fearsome tag could represent a ton of damage for Dango, especially in the mirror match. That Kithria the Bold might be exactly what he needs to kind of swing that matchup in his favor. As we were saying during the quarterfinals, you know, this is kind of a make or break card with this deck, and it's so far it's proven to be the stronger choice.
Yeah, and I really wanted to see more support aggro decks come through. That's the one thing that I personally, again, I haven't seen in solo queue, and I really wanted to see more of, just to see how exactly it operates, to see how it is able to just showcase what it's able to do. And from what I've been noticing, is it's kind of just the scout deck, but just throwing a couple of support cards in there. You know, you take out the MF, you take out the the Quinn, take out the Lucian, and it's got a bunch of Demacian, it's got a bunch of early game cards, and um, you know, I feel like it's gonna be like I continue to say this, but it's gonna be fast games just because the two times that we ended up seeing both of these support aggro decks, we didn't even get to 10 mana. I don't even think we got to 8 mana uh,
You know,
because of how fast it was.
Yeah, but no, for sure. The support aggro deck is really really threatening. I think the players are just about ready to get into their match here. This is going to be our grand finals, game number one. You know, I'm I'm honestly just taken aback by how quickly this series has gone by. Like these 2-0 game matches, three times. You know, as we were saying, like Zingbet coming out of the quarterfinals going 4-0 and coming into the finals going 0-4. You know, it's a dramatic change. And these finals, you know, these players are really showing us their best stuff. And I'm really, really, really excited to see what we have with Spencer versus Dango here. I think the players are just about ready to go. Just to make sure, check in with the team and make sure everything's good to go.
Hmm. Yeah, I know that what's his what's his player's name? Dango's all set up. We just have to wait for Spencer. And he's experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties, but we should get it resolved fairly soon, right?
Yeah, you know, with these tournaments and things, sometimes it's a little tricky, especially since the players are streaming from home. You know, sometimes there's some issues getting the feeds up on our cameras for us. Um, but of course, that's kind of the disadvantage, you know, playing from home as opposed to playing
Yeah.
on LAN. I would love to play Runeterra on LAN. I feel like it would be so much fun. I understand that you've had experience playing Runeterra on LAN, or at least casting Runeterra on LAN
Oh, that
before.
was crazy.
Stable.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit what that was like?
Yeah, so what we did is for day number 1 of Runeterra's release, we wanted to set up a day 1 tournament for it. And what we did is we grabbed 2 computers in our computer lab. We hooked them both up to HDMIs into the stream computer, and we were able to run the feeds on all of the computers. It was like all across the room,
That
and
sounds absolutely crazy. It
it was
looks
insane.
It looks like the players are starting. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to grab Spencer's feed here. Our broadcast team is working diligently to try to figure that out for us. But the players have started their game. Dango leading with the Fleet Feather Tracker here.
Yeah, it's super basic coming through with the Demacian deck. Is just put down Fleet Feather. The only thing is that he has to follow it up with something, and that's what's absolutely huge, right? War Chef's coming out for Spencer, not in the best position for him because you know, you would usually like to pair that up with something, being the supported character he is, but putting down Cythria, allowing Fleet Feather to get the challenger is kind of what you want to be going for.
For sure. Uh, I understand there's some difficulties with the stream, so we'll do our best to kind of explain what's happening for you guys on stream. We've got the Fleet Feathers coming down here for Dango, with the Senna coming out now, a really massive board for Dango. And the Fleet Feathers here, like really threatening onto this board. It looks like Senna's going to come in and attack into this Laurent Protege and this War
Smart.
Chefs and put some pressure down on the board.
It's very smart. It's very, very smart because what it does is it allows you to still keep your board presence and you take out one of your opponent's cards. But just as I say that, Rangers resolve to allow the Senna to, I believe, fall. And that's it. Senna's gone. No more Senna.
And you know, Senna dying without Lucian on board is kind of just really upsetting. You know, so usually the reason you want that, you're okay taking that Senna trade, is because you have the Lucian on board, and with the Lucian on board, you know that Lucian immediately levels up as soon as Senna dies. But without the Lucian on board, the Senna dying kind of just, she just died for nothing, really. So we're gonna actually see here Spencer turning back here with the War Chefs into the Laurent Protege, attacking into the Fleet Feather Tracker, and just getting a quick clear out here with the Misfortune tag, with a quick 2 damage Pokemon Nexus.
Yeah, he does the 2 damage, or yeah, he does the 2 damage over towards the opponent's Nexus, 18 to 15, now going into the next round. But having the Grizzled Ranger is absolutely massive. You allow just a scout turn to go through, and I believe no one really wants to block this. Just allow yourself to tank 3 to your face. But there's the allegiance, and that's the benefit of having a lot of Demacian cards, is
Yeah,
you allow
these
that.
decks are running like almost 75% Demacian cards, so you have a very high chance of hitting that allegiance. Dango here, you know, has that scout tag, the ability to attack in here. He's going to put the pressure down on this Misfortune, might even opt for the riposte. Going to go for the trade here and clear out that Misfortune before it's too late, before he loses that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, try and get Misfortune out as fast as possible. Does have the repost available, which is going to allow him to do that, just like you said. I'm curious. Yeah, he's not going to actually play anything else. He doesn't want to deal any more damage to the War Chefs. That is kind of interesting too. that you
I
didn't
think
exactly
I
want to
think
suck
looking
up.
at Dango's hand, the reason you don't want to do any more damage to the war chest is because you have nothing to back it up. So you're just trading out a
Yeah.
unit without having a response. And here comes the Genevieve with that +1/1, with that challenger, with that scout. You know, Dango's safe to play the Grizzled Ranger. It is a last breath unit, so if it dies, it will come back as a Royal Badger Bear. So he's okay taking that trade and playing that unit down. But doesn't have enough mana to rally back in return. So Spencer, just with the stronger board, you know, really happy to take some of these easy trades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even using the Genevieve later on is going to be really, really good. But oh wait, you can actually use it now and then just not take too much damage as well. Um, and I think this, yeah, he's going to have a lot of board clear, or at least backline clear for himself too, which is really good.
For sure. This board state not looking super great for Dango. Having to take some pretty unfavorable trades here. Spencer's going to be happy to clean this up, not only with a board advantage but a card advantage as well, moving into turn 7. And as you were saying, these decks, you know, it is the mirror match, so we're not going to feel that fall off as we were talking about as hard. But we are moving into turn 7, where these units start to feel a little kind of lackluster. You know, these 2-drop, 3-drop units playing down in these later stages of the game. And with both these decks kind of like throwing resources at him, I think Spencer's really done a good job of building up a lead here and getting kind of to that late game stage. This Make It Rain, gonna ping off the Laurent Protege, missing the Genevieve though. Probably not what Dango was looking for here.
Nope. And I feel like it would have been really good if he got the Genevieve there. That was the most ideal situation that he could have done. Grizzled Ranger versus Grizzled Ranger. Who wins?
It's the matchup of the century, you know, you are your biggest enemy, and the Grizzled Ranger, you know, really showing that to us. Trading out easily into those loyal Badger Bears.
Exactly. He does have the Senna as well as a rally for himself, but that would only be lethal. But he's gonna now Relentless Pursuit. It does allow him to use the Scout again, but that's gonna be quickly pulled.
We see Dango attacking in here with the Fleet Feather Tracker, choosing not to attack with the Loyal Badger Bear. He's not going to have the opportunity to play the Senna down if Spencer just goes for the hit right here. We have to see how Spencer plays this. Spencer may choose not to attack after that situation, but no, it looks like he is going to push in, and he is going to take the +1 on to the Bannerman here for a quick 7 damage to face. Dango now dangerously low, sitting on 4 health, but he has managed to swing the board back in his favor with the Senna down now. Moving on to the defensive turn, does have the rally in hand. We'll have to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that now is the time that it would be really fun to watch the opponent's or see the opponent's hand, to see Spencer's hand. But obviously, sadly, we cannot. Uh, Senna going to be taken out very early on here in this turn, and still has one more under his belt as well.
It looks like that's going to be the game actually for Spencer in this game 1, having those 2 4 damage units attacking on 4 and health of the Nexus. The Loyal Badger blocks 1, but he can't block both. And Spencer clutching the win, game number 1 with the Bannerman, striking the Nexus for 4 damage, and Dango goes down.
And just like we said, it was going to be a super fast game, and that's already game number 1 wrapped up. And that's just kind of what we get playing with those aggro decks, and that just looked so easy coming through for Dango, right?
No, yeah, obviously. I mean, Dango, like we thought Dango's deck was favored. You know, we talked about it. That K3 of the Bold, we thought that was the stronger choice over the Genevieve, but it looks like the Genevieve, you know, pulling 2 of them, Spencer managing to find 2, one turn after the other, and striking right into that Nexus. Really big win for Spencer. Really happy to take that game number 1 in this match.
For a second, I kind of forgot who was who because both of their decks were so similar that I was like, wait a minute.
Spencer loaded into that game, and he was like, "I'm you, but stronger," and he
Exactly.
played with that kind of energy for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, because we both expected Dango to win that game. Very easily he can't come back, right? There's still 2 more games left here in this set, and now he hasn't readied up the Shen Lulu deck just yet.
Yeah, so since it is conquest form, Spencer has to win his final game with his Ezreal TF, but Dango actually has the opportunity to choose here. He could go back to the Misfortune Lucian, or he can move onto the Shen Lulu, and he's going to take his time and think. Daniel, what do you think the better matchup is for him going into this game number 2?
I think he would have to go. Well, Spencer has to go TF Ezreal, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that would kind of that kind of settles for Spencer, but for Dango, I feel like he already tried to go Lucian MF, and it didn't exactly work out for him, right? So now going for the Lulu Shen should be a little bit better.
Yeah,
Should be a
I
little
mean
better.
the support aggro deck for sure. Into the Ezreal Twisted Fate, I think the value in it is that Ezreal TF likes to take its time, and the support aggro deck also likes to take its time, but in a way that kind of resists itself from spell removal. You know, with all these barriers coming out, with the Shen with some of these kind of like barrier spells, can really resist against a lot of this poke damage that this Ezreal TF list has, and it can actually afford to go late game. It kind of really depends on how these players draw. You know, it's the heart of the cards in that matchup for sure. I do, however, still feel that the Misfortune Lucian is the stronger matchup, just because of the aggro that Lucian provides. You know, these 2-drop, 3-drop champions coming out with crazy amounts of damage right off the get go. And as we know, this Ezreal TF deck is not very unit favored. It's mostly spells. May not have enough bodies to tank that early aggression.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I feel like we're gonna have to see how both of these guys play out their decks, because we could do as much analyzation as we want, but if we see what Zingbet drew from round number 1, game number 1, then all of our analyzation just goes out the window.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it really is kind of up to the deck to favor its player, and we've seen in this tournament, as you mentioned, sometimes the cards just fail you, especially in a certain matchup. You know, usually as a deck builder, you do your best to optimize your list to be kind of perfect in the early game, so that you can actually get to the late game. Like, you know, even these late game decks running a lot of 2-drop and 3-drop units, but sometimes you just don't find what you need, or in those deep decks, all your dreg dredgers are stuck at the bottom, and it just happens, and you kind of have to adapt and deal with it. And sometimes against these aggro lists, you just don't have the time to adapt. They don't give you the time to adapt.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I want to see if Dango ends up pulling out the Lucian. I know that you were really favoring the Lucian MF, and it's a really good deck even at that. Cytheria the Bold coming out later on can be really good. We saw what the Vanguard Bannerman can do, just allowing your early game cards just to get a little bit buffed up. Relentless Pursuit we saw in an earlier matchup as well. But Cytheria the Bold is really what we got to be looking at. We actually haven't seen it yet here in this tournament, and a lot of these decks are running it.
Uh, I mean, we got to see it during the qualifiers, but definitely not during the finals yet, at least. Spencer, with his Ezreal TF deck, the interesting thing that we noticed yesterday when he actually had the mirror match versus Zingbet is that Spencer actually tucks in a Pool Shark into his list. And Pool Shark is kind of one of those cards where, you know, you're not really sure how you feel about it when you first see it. It comes out, it's a 1-point unit that lets you draw fleeting at the start of your hand. So it synergizes really well with Twisted Fate, but sometimes you draw a fleeting card and you don't have the mana to cast it, and that feels awful when you kind of dump away some of your best cards. So it's a really high risk, high reward card with that Pool Shark. But Spencer, you know, having the faith in his Ezreal TF deck, having the faith in his top decks to really find what he needs when he needs it, you know, comfortable enough to run that card.
Yeah, right. And since there is going to be no TFs coming here so far, I don't think anything. Well, actually, no, I'm lying. Spencer's going to be running the TF Ezreal here, and there we go. Now we're finally going to start here.
It looks like one up to our broadcast team for figuring out
There we go.
all these issues here. Finally going to go into our game number 2 here. We are going to see Dango running the support aggro list into the Ezreal Twisted Fate. And Dango with that flawless mulligan. He doesn't even redraw anything. It's the Fleet Feather Tracker into the Warchefs, into the Lulu, into the Shen. There's nothing better than that curve. That is a flawless curve. With Spencer here, though, on his side, actually a decent starting hand as well. You know, no champions in his hand, but he does have a number of ways of dropping Plunder. He has the Thermal Beam. He's looking like he might actually redraw some of these cards here, though. He's going to take a second to think about it. But this curve actually doesn't look too bad for him. Curious to see what it is that he's hunting for instead.
Yeah, he's going to get a really nice starting. I just had to open up his stream. I totally forgot that his stream was now working. But Jagged Butcher, turn number 1, just allowing him to. I was going to say if he wants to trade, he can. But I don't know if they want to exactly use the Fleet Feather here on turn number 1, because he's got the Warchefs, right? He's got the Lulu that he can eventually chain that with. And I feel like when you need to level up your Lulu, then not sacrificing your turn 1.
So 100%. Dango knows this, and Spencer might even just go for the Make It Rain here just to clear out that Fleet Feather Tracker before that challenger comes out, and it's exactly what we're going to see. the 1 damage ping onto the Fleet Feather Tracker, you do have some 2-drop options there in hand. You could make a powder keg, you could get the Black Market Merchant down, but just clearing up that Challenger unit and denying Dango the ability to start procking up his supports here is exactly how you want to play it in this matchup.
Yeah, this is really interesting too. Once again, not wanting to use um, any sort of blockage going through, mainly because he wants to save all of the support that he can. But a lot of early game damage coming through from Spencer already got his opponent down by 5, and we're going into round number 3 or 4, and there's already a 5 damage deficit.
Spencer making a really hard read here. You notice he had the ability to play the Black Market Merchant last turn with the 2 mana and nab off the top of the deck, but instead, knowing that turn 4 was coming up, knowing that Dango was likely to play the Shen and play on curve, Spencer choosing to hold the mana for the Thermal Beam and just take the easy clear onto the Shen, denying again another support, another level up. Really just playing against Dango's win con here and really kind of controlling the board in a really masterful way.
Yeah, it allows Lulu to at least see one supported ally go through, but Lulu only really needs three allies to be supported, and now she does get to support her Laurent, but it's not going to go through just yet. Obviously, it's still the opponent's attacking turn right now.
And it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Save the One, but it looks like Dango actually has all 3 Lulus in hand. They've turned into Whimsy. Whimsy, as we were mentioning earlier, is a ridiculously strong control card. Turning a follower into a 1/1 squirrel makes it really easy for these support challengers to find valuable trades. Turning these strong defenders into 1/1 squirrels that just can't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. And giving your what was it, 2/2, now 4/4, and taking out an opponent is absolutely massive. No Static Shock actually going through, which is very surprising. Not wanting
I
to
think the reason he wants to hold the Static Shock is because he wants to see if he can find like a more. He knows he has the Petty Officer in hand that can make it into the powder barrel. He wants to see if he can find a Fleet Feather Tracker that he can bop down with that Static Shock rather than just poking damage into the Lulu. He knows he'll have other ways of killing the Lulu. He just wants to find some lethal units points here and kill off these units rather than just poke them down.
Now the option comes through for Dango. Does he actually want a relentless pursuit? He put it on the board, but he has to confirm it since it is a slow spell, and actually does. So he does now get a rally, but there's the Static Shock.
And Spencer quick to respond to that relentless pursuit with the Static Shock. Dango does have the mana, however, to kind of commit some resources here, and he does actually play the riposte onto the Protege. This is going to be just enough to level up this Lulu here. And with 2 other Lulus in hand, even if a Thermogenic Beam comes down and crushes this Lulu out, we're going to see another leveled up Lulu almost immediately afterwards. So honestly, for Dango, really high value play here. And that Black Market Merchant coming out is just going to get challenged immediately.
Yep, having the help picks in your hand at the start of each round, I said this last game, is going to be absolutely amazing. But giving your supported ally, what did that say? +5, or no, turning them into a 5/5 unit is huge, right? You draw one of your 1+ cards that you don't exactly 1-cost cards that you don't exactly want to get in the early game, and it just allows you to just what is it called? Turn it into a 5/5.
We do see Spencer, however, with a couple tools in his hand to funnel out some cards. He has the Riptide Rex. He's probably going to look to keep some carryover mana so that he can play the Make It Rain into the Riptide Rex. But we're going to see Dango just respond really quickly here at the beginning of his turn with the barrier. Keep that Lulu alive from whatever Spencer may have up his sleeve.
Could also just end his turn now. And that's the one thing that Dango is kind of questioning, is why. What ended up happening there in that last turn? If he was smart enough, he would kind of know that it was Riptide Rex, but yeah, you'd have to really, really think about it.
Well, we do actually see the barrier come out here, and it looks like Spencer, rather, I was going to say he has the warning shot in hand, but rather than taking the warning shot, he's actually comfortable making the plunder call here instead. Quick way to burn off that barrier, I guess, hoping for the high roll there. And now the Riptide Rex could potentially threaten this Lulu and actually threaten to kill the Lulu here.
Yeah, it's going to do, once he does end up placing it down, 2 damage to Laurent, 2 damage to the other one, and then again take out the Lulu as well. And it's going to put the Nexus on very, very low HP as well.
Dango making a really interesting call here to actually go for the attack when he knows the Riptide Rex is
Yeah.
up. He's buffed these units. I guess he knows that the Riptide Rex is coming down, and he just wants to take out as many units as he can. But this Riptide Rex is going to full board clear here.
Yep. And I feel like he also wanted to just sacrifice his own unit to get Lulu down to 2 HP, because each I guess, what is it, cannon does 2 damage to a follower. And whoop.
When is he coming out? Supposedly, I think Daniel was reading and he was trying to see if that would shut down the Riptide Rex's effect. We'll actually have to see how this resolves. I'm not very familiar with this interaction, so we'll see what this looks like. But it looks like Dango, really wanting to kill off this Riptide Rex. He's going to do it onto the 1/1 scroll there, but the bombs are still going to go through. So Dango, unfortunately, he was messing around with some interactions. He wanted to see how that was going to play out, and unfortunately for him, the silence did not work. You can see the sad Poro accepting his defeat there in that situation, not going his way for sure.
That's not that bad. Oh, Relentless Pursuit. He gets it, which is great if he had more cards.
It could still be great with the riposte in hand. Dango doesn't have a response available present to him.
Yeah.
And this strike here, this single combat here is not going to be enough. The Lulu just goes down, and that's actually going to be the game.
Oh, wow, you're right. Yeah, that's it.
Another 2-0 series. These finals have been ridiculous.
Wow.
2-0 in the first round, 2-0 in the second round, 2-0 in the bronze, and a 2-0 for Spencer. Spencer, the underdog, coming in at 4th place from the qualifiers, taking the win and the tournament in a 2-0 series. Just unbelievable.
Yeah. We were going into this tournament and we saw Spencer coming into this 2-2, and we did not expect him to win whatsoever. We didn't really we didn't think that he was going to do too well, but you know what? He ends up going 2-0 in the semifinals, and then finally 2-0 in the finals themselves. So he played a great game, great showing for sure, and he knows his decks.
I mean, I'm always a big fan of these underdog players, and these underdog decks as well. Nightfall aggro, as I was saying, it's my favorite deck, but it's not necessarily very good. And I think that's part of the reason why I love to see it. So seeing Spencer, coming in as the underdog, as the 4th place finalist, really at the bottom of the pack here, lowest rank of all the competitors as well, and just taking the win in 2 back-to-back 2-0 series is just phenomenal. Outstanding play from Spencer. Should really be proud of himself. Here we're going to get to take a quick look at the bracket, kind of see a quick little view history of how the players ended up here. And it's just, oh my gosh, just look at this.
Yeah, we remember it. We remember it very early on. Dango took on David, and that was, I think, the longest series that we've had, running at 20 minutes. So that was an extremely fast one. But then Zingbet versus Spencer was the first game of the day that we ended up watching, going 2-0 versus him. 2-0 is all across the day today. Zingbet versus David, that was also another great one that we got to watch, with David taking that 2-0, and then what we just watched, which was another 2-0 from Spencer.
Yeah, just phenomenal series. I mean, I'm still having a really hard time wrapping my head around it. We watched these qualifiers, and there were so many 2-1s and ties and whatever. And just see these absolute crushing victories.
Yeah.
I think what it really came down to at the end of the day was just knowledge of your deck, and I think tournament play. I mean, if you're a fan of Legends of Runeterra, you're in our Twitch chat right now. If you play Runeterra, but you haven't necessarily played in the tournament setting, it's a totally different environment than playing on the ladder. On the ladder, you don't know what the other person's running. You can make some guesses here and there, but you don't know what the other person's running, and you kind of really have to play a very self-centric game. I know what my deck does. I'm going to do the best that my deck can do. But in the tournament, it's not just about what your deck can do, but it's about knowing with exact precision what your opponent's deck can do, and also knowing what matchup you need in order to get that win. And Spencer just showed time and time again that he knew his decks so well that he was able to figure out what matchups he needed and really focus out his opponent's win condition. Just really showing up with these aggro lists. So very well played, Spencer, our first place finalist.
Yeah, he came into this day with 3 decks, and they were 3 very, very meta decks, which was just the Quinn MF, the Scouts aggro, as well as the Swain TF, and that's just been the standard mid game deck, other than the Aurelion Soul Lux that we usually see. But The Ezreal TF has been a new one, and it's aggressive, but it also has a whole lot of spells, so that Ezreal can definitely level up.
We're just taking a quick second here to get some kind of final graphics shown up here. But just as a reminder, if you're tuning in now and for watching the whole watching our tournament series, thank you so much for watching us from Saturday's stream onto today. If you do want to keep up with what we're doing, ICGN, if we ever do other tournaments, we're looking to do more Runeterra tournaments hopefully in the future. Make sure to follow us at the links down below, twitch.tv/Unigame Network, and it's the same for our Twitter as well. So make sure to give us a follow. We have our amazing graphic here for first, second, and third place finalists. They're going to be getting their rewards: $50 worth of RP and a bunker going to Spencer as the first place. For second place, obviously Dango getting that $20 RP with the Cougar bunker as well. And third place for David, that $10 RP and the Cougar bunker. So big thank you to our sponsors, EGD Collective and All Mid, for providing these prizes to our finalists.
Yeah, and a great tournament even at that. I know that of course we would have loved to see the closer style semifinals as well as finals, but you know what? It was it really just shows you how great all of these players are. You know, when matched up against each other. We thought that Dango was going to at least put up a little bit of a fight, but that was absolutely insane coming out of Spencer, and the aggro decks are really good in his hand for sure.
So again, thank you so much to everyone in our Twitch chat for watching our Runeterra tournament. Give your love to our competitors for really pulling up and committing their time to this. You know, it's the middle of school, and these players put a lot of time into kind of practicing decks and kind of coming up with these lists and really playing their A game, really doing their best to represent their schools. So make sure you give your love to the players. My name's Zeddy. I'm working alongside here, the Safe One. And we want to give you a big thank you all to everyone here, and also to our production team for really helping us out with this broadcast. It took a lot of work to put this together, and we are just so happy with how it turned out, and we're very grateful for all the people that worked behind us to put this up for you guys to enjoy.
Yeah. Nothing else I need to add.
To what we love, risk the fall, or we have felt it all come crashing down from far above. Stars are rising, countless worlds colliding, only one will take it all.